if you're still there.
I am willing, and I'm here. So thanks, Deirdre. My camera, for some reason, won't work, so that might be a merciful release for all of you. So unfortunately, this is going to be more like a radio presentation than a visual one. So good morning, and it's good to be with you all. Thank you, Deirdre and Ubuntu, for inviting me to say a few words. I heard two lines the other day that I thought you might like. It's about parents and the challenge of homeschooling their children. And the first line is, we know that it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a vineyard to homeschool one. The second was actually from a photograph of a parent standing outside a teacher's house with a handmade sign that reads, "Teacher, you were wrong. My child is not a delight to have in class." I think, if anything, the past few months have given parents a much greater appreciation of the skill and professionalism and patience of teachers. And if parents didn't know your value before, they certainly do now. So Deirdre asked that I say a few words on development education in the current context from the point of view of an NGO that does DevEd. So I thought I would just share with you 4 things in 4 minutes that we are thinking about in the DevEd unit in Concern, which is about the same time as it takes to boil an egg. So I hope you like your eggs hard, because I probably might go a little over time, but I'll try and stay within time. So the first thing that we're thinking about is reset or refresh. One of the words we are hearing a lot in conversations these days is reset, as in the pandemic has presented us, the world, with a chance to do things differently, to go back to zero. So it's about starting again, reimagining the system to not go back to the old normal, but create a new normal, start new conversations. And I think for so many things in Ireland and the world that are clearly not working, that is absolutely what we should do. We could start with an easy one, like capitalism. I joke. But obviously issues of homelessness and housing, inequality, hospital waiting lists, for us in Concern, hunger and conflict, and our less than adequate efforts to tackle climate change do need a reset. But when it comes to development education, I don't think the same thing applies. I'm not sure that we need a reset. I'm not sure that we need to start again. I think the pandemic has actually reinforced the importance, the values, the rights, the justice issues that we have been going on about for so many years. When we look at those who have been most impacted by this pandemic, it is yet again the poorest, the most vulnerable, the elderly. Not only the same groups we see in every crisis, but the same groups we see every day around the world. One small, almost sideline statistic in this pandemic is that because of delays and reprioritization, because of the pandemic, over 117 million children will miss out on measles vaccinations in the coming 2 weeks. Not to mention the millions more who the UN has warned us are in danger of going hungry. So it is those same vulnerable groups that are yet again at risk. So no, DevEd does not need a reset, but we do need to refresh our narrative. At times in recent years, I think we've become too much of the moment, reacting to the latest outrage. I think we've become a bit too focused on progress toward meeting the SDGs and not the obstacles that lie in their way. And maybe we need to get back to talking of root causes and unjust structures, which forms the bedrock of the DE narrative, I think, which goes some way to what the point Gary was just raising, which in recent years has not always been to the fore in the work that we do. I'm speaking more from Concern, reflecting on our own work, and not dev ed in general, but if the shoe fits. The second thing we're thinking about is global systems and structures. After the 2008 financial crisis, the best development educator in Ireland, President Michael D. Higgins, spoke of the need to create in our young and all our citizens in general an economic literacy that will demystify what is too often presented as being too complex for us to understand. He was speaking in the context of millions of people around the world losing their savings, their jobs, their houses, and not understanding why, or being able to hold people to account for it. I read recently Yanis Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister's book, talking to my daughter about the economy. And she was 14 years old at the time. But it is exactly the kind of demystification that President Higgins is talking about. Simply addressing the questions, why have so many got so much while so many others have so little? And I think Financial Justice Ireland has really taken a lead in this regard as well. So again, in the current pandemic, the president says, responding adequately, not only to COVID-19, but to the structural global inequalities in areas such as trade and debt can help achieve necessary sustainable connections between economy, society, and ecology, not only in Africa, but worldwide. Our response also offers an opportunity to recognize and promote Africa's own capacity, skill, and ability. Surely, he says, now is the time for real multilateralism, for solidarity, and for universal basic services. So yeah, taking up the challenge to demystify finance systems, health systems, food systems, and trade is another thing that we are thinking about in terms of our development education work. The third thing, and I'll try and hurry along here, the third thing we're thinking about is the other pandemic that was here long before COVID and sadly will be here long after. And that is the pandemic of racism. And this time, everyone is asking, how will real and lasting change be brought about? In fact, we were just agreeing the concerned debate motions last week for the next school year. And one of the motions is, this time, after the killing of George Floyd, things will be different. It's one we hope the proposition will win, but history over the last 150 years repeatedly says differently. Again, it is about systems and root causes, but we are wondering how conversations will sound in schools around the country and the contribution of development education in those conversations, as well, of course, about re-examining our own organization and personal behaviors. And finally, and our egg is probably burnt by now, so I'm sorry, but we're thinking, and this is the question that Deirdre posed at the beginning, and I have no answers, unfortunately, but we're thinking of what development education will look like in September, with blended learning, class bubbles, staggered drop-offs, and social distancing, and other measures. We're anticipating that there will be no room for the contact and connection with the school community that development education needs. So we're putting everything online, but wondering what the impact of that will be and how interactive and engaging, can one really be on Zoom. We also wonder about students and agency and the wonderful things that were happening over the past couple of years with Fridays for Futures. We wonder about the Black Lives Matter protest that possibly would happen, or the whole transition year experience, and what will be the opportunities for deeper engagement in development education across all of those. So that's where we are at the moment. We're looking to refresh, not reset. We're looking to recommit to looking at root causes and global systems, in our development education work. We're looking at development education's role in ending.
Michael, I've lost you there
sorry,
now.
Sorry, you must have had a preset mute there, did you, Deirdre?
I did not, Michael. I would never mute you. No, sorry, just the last few seconds is all we lost.
Okay, so the last few seconds, I was going to say, so that's where we are at the moment. We're looking to refresh, not reset. We're recommitting to looking at the root causes and global systems in our development education work. We're looking at development education's role in ending racism and the challenge of lived